Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, Stories Beyond the Porch. So tonight's story is about someone's best friend who was being dared to knock on the neighbor's door and how those 7 confusing words change their entire life. So let's get into it.
So here's the thing about making stupid bets with your best friend at 2 in the morning. You never actually think you're going to have to follow through. I'm standing outside her apartment right now, and my hands are sweating so bad I can barely hold my phone. Jake's texting me every 30 seconds with those dumb flame emojis, and I'm seriously considering just turning around and pretending this never happened. But I can't because he's watching from his car in the parking lot like some kind of creep, and if I bail now, I'll never hear the end of it. Let me back up. Her name is Sophie, and she moved into the apartment across the courtyard from me about 4 months ago. Austin summers are brutal, and our complex doesn't have the best AC. So most people end up on their balconies in the evenings just trying to catch a breeze. That's how I first saw her. She was carrying like 3 boxes stacked so high she couldn't see over them, and she almost walked straight into the railing. I almost yelled out to warn her, but then she course-corrected at the last second, and I felt like an idiot for even thinking about it. After that, I started noticing her more. Not in a creepy way, I swear, just in that way where once you notice someone exists, you can't really stop noticing them. She had this whole routine. Every night around 7, she'd come out with a book and this oversized mug that had to be tea because who drinks coffee that late? And she'd curl up in this beat-up lawn chair that looked like it came from a garage sale. Sometimes she'd have her hair up in this messy bun thing. Sometimes it was down. She wore a lot of vintage band t-shirts, like actually vintage, not the Target kind, and she had this habit of tucking her feet under her when she read that made her look smaller than she actually was. I know that sounds weird, I know, but it wasn't like I was obsessing or anything. She was just there, part of the scenery, part of my routine too, I guess. The problem started about 3 weeks ago when Jake came over and caught me glancing out at her balcony. He got this look on his face, that stupid grin that meant he was about to make my life difficult, and he said, "Dude, you're totally into her." I told him to shut up. I told him I barely even noticed her. I told him a lot of things that were probably lies but sounded good at the time. He didn't buy any of it. So for 3 weeks, he's been on my case about it. Every time we hang out, it's, "Have you talked to her yet?" or "When are you going to make a move?" Or my personal favorite, "You're going to wait until some other guy asks her out, and then you'll regret it forever." That last one actually kind of got to me because there was this night last week where I saw some guy on her balcony with her, and they were laughing about something, and I had this weird feeling in my chest that I didn't really want to examine too closely. Turns out it was her brother visiting from Dallas, but I didn't know that at the time. Anyway, last night, Jake came over with a 12-pack and this plan. He said we were going to make it interesting. He said if I didn't ask Sophie out by the end of the week, I had to pay for his ticket to ACL Festival, the 3-day pass. Which is like $400 that I definitely don't have. But if I actually did it, if I asked her out and she said yes, he'd cover my ticket too. I should have said no. I should have told him to take his bet and shove it. But it was late and I was tired, and maybe a tiny part of me wanted an excuse to actually do it, so I said yes. Now it's Friday night. End of the week, and I'm standing outside apartment 3C with my heart trying to break out of my ribcage. I knocked like 2 minutes ago, and I can hear movement inside, and I'm running through every possible thing I could say. I had a whole speech planned. I practiced it in the mirror this morning like a complete loser. It was something about how I'd noticed her reading, and I was wondering if she had any recommendations, and maybe we could talk about books over coffee sometime. Casual. Friendly. Not too forward. I've completely forgotten all of it. The door opens, and there she is, Sophie. Except she's not in one of her vintage t-shirts. She's in paint-splattered overalls, and there's a streak of blue across her cheek, and her hair is tied back with what looks like a bandana. She's got paint on her hands, too, and she looks confused and a little bit annoyed and absolutely beautiful in a way that makes my brain stop working entirely. "Hey," she says. Just that. "Hey." Like a normal person answering their door on a Friday night. "Hi," I manage. I'm Carter, from across the way. The courtyard. I live across the courtyard." She knows who I am. I can see it in her eyes, this little flicker of recognition, but she doesn't say anything. She just waits for me to continue, and I realize I'm supposed to have a reason for being here. I was just, my friend. See, there's this thing. I'm bombing. I'm completely bombing. He dared me. No, wait, that sounds bad. Not dared. It was more like a bet. Which also sounds bad. Sophie raises an eyebrow. She's got nice eyebrows. That's a weird thing to notice right now, but I'm noticing it anyway. A bet, she repeats. Yeah, but not in a bad way. It's just, okay. I take a breath. I try to remember the speech. I can't. So I just say it. Would you want to go out sometime? Like for coffee, or food, or literally anything. With me. Would you want to go out with me? It's not a question the way I say it. It's more like a statement of panic. But it's out there now, and I can't take it back. Sophie looks at me for a long moment. I can hear Jake's car stereo from the parking lot. Some rap song he's probably blasting to celebrate what he thinks is going to be my victory. I can hear my own heartbeat in my ears. I can hear everything except what I want to hear, which is her answer. Then she smiles. It's small at first, just the corner of her mouth, but it grows into something real and warm and a little bit amused. I hope you have a great story to tell him, she says. And before I can figure out what that means, before I can ask if that's a yes or a no or what, she steps back and closes the door. I'm left standing in the hallway like an idiot with my phone buzzing in my pocket and Jake probably losing his mind in the parking lot and absolutely no idea what just happened. I walked back to my apartment in a complete daze. Jake was already blowing up my phone, but I couldn't even look at the messages because my brain was stuck on repeat, playing those 7 words over and over. I hope you have a great story to tell him. What did that even mean? By the time I got inside, Jake was pounding on my door. I let him in because ignoring him would have just made it worse, and the second he saw my face, he knew something weird had happened. Dude, what? He said. Did she say yes? No. Did she laugh at you? Quote. I don't know, I told him, and I really didn't. I explained the whole thing, every painful second of it, and Jake just stood there with this confused look on his face that probably matched mine. He tried to analyze it like we were studying for some test. Maybe she meant yes but wanted to see if I'd try again. Maybe she meant no but didn't want to be mean about it. Maybe she was testing me or playing hard to get, or maybe she just thought I was a total weirdo and that was her polite way of shutting me down. We went in circles for like an hour before Jake finally left, and I was alone with my thoughts, which was somehow worse. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept thinking about the way she smiled, like she was in on some joke I didn't understand. It wasn't mean, though. That's the thing that kept me up. It wasn't mean at all. Saturday morning, I woke up to someone knocking on my door. For a second, I thought maybe it was Jake again coming back with some new theory. But when I opened it, there was a package sitting on my doormat. Small brown box. No label, no address. Just my apartment number written in blue pen on top. I brought it inside and opened it on my kitchen counter. Inside was a book. Actually, it was a book I recognized because I'd seen Sophie reading it on her balcony a few weeks ago. Some mystery novel with a detective on the cover. And tucked inside the front cover was a note on lined paper that looked like it'd been torn out of a notebook. The note said, Chapter 7, Saturday, 3 p.m. Mozart's. That was it. No signature. No explanation. But I knew Sophie's handwriting from the apartment number on the box, and my heart started doing that thing again where it felt too big for my chest. Mozart's was this coffee shop right on the lake, the one that's always packed with tourists and locals and people pretending to write screenplays on their laptops. I'd been there a few times, but never for any particular reason. I spent the next 6 hours trying to figure out what to wear, which is insane, because I don't usually care about that stuff. But suddenly, every shirt I owned felt wrong. Too casual, too formal, too much like I was trying. I settled on jeans and a plain gray t-shirt, and then changed 3 more times before going back to the gray shirt. I got to Mozart's at 2:45 because showing up early felt better than showing up late. I bought a coffee I didn't really want and found a table outside on the deck overlooking the water. Then I opened the book to Chapter 7 like the note said. It was a scene where the detective meets an informant at a cafe, and the informant gives him a clue by leaving a message in a book. Real subtle, Sophie. At exactly 3 p.m. she showed up. No paint this time. She was wearing jean shorts and a faded Fleetwood Mac shirt, and her hair was down, and she had sunglasses pushed up on her head. She looked like summer felt, and I forgot how to breathe for a second. She sat down across from me without asking, just pulled out the chair and settled in like we'd planned this together. "So," she said, "do you have a great story to tell him?" Quote. I just stared at her. "I'm so confused right now." Sophie laughed, and it was the first time I'd heard her laugh, and it sounded exactly like I thought it would. Warm and genuine and a little bit unexpected. "Your friend," she said. "The one who betcha. Jake, right? I've seen him hanging around. He's not exactly subtle." She leaned forward a little. "Here's the thing, Carter from across the courtyard. I don't really love being someone's dare or bet or whatever, but I figured if you were brave enough to actually go through with it, even though you looked like you were going to pass out on my doorstep, then maybe you deserved a chance." "A chance?" I repeated. "To tell him a good story," she said, and smiled that same smile from last night. "So, you want to start with coffee and see where it goes?" Quote. I said yes before my brain could even catch up with my mouth. Sophie ordered an iced tea because I was right about her not being a coffee person, and we sat there on the deck at Mozart's for 3 hours just talking. And I mean really talking. Not like awkward first date stuff where you're trying to impress someone or say the right things. It felt easy in a way I wasn't expecting. She told me about how she moved to Austin for a graphic design job that turned out to be way more corporate than she wanted, so now she was doing freelance work and painting on the side. That explained the overalls and the blue streak on her face. She was working on this series of paintings based on album covers from the 70s, which explained all the vintage band shirts. I told her about my job doing IT support, which sounds boring because it is boring, but she actually seemed interested when I told her about some of the weird calls I get. Like the lady who thought her computer had a virus because her mouse was moving on its own, but really her cat was just sitting on the wireless mouse on the other side of her desk. Sophie laughed so hard at that story she almost knocked over her tea. We talked about books, too. Turns out she's one of those people who reads like 3 books at once, which I don't understand, but I thought it was cool. I'm more of a 1 book at a time person, and I read slow because I get distracted easy. She didn't judge me for that. She just asked what I was reading now and seemed genuinely interested when I told her. The sun started setting over the lake, and the whole sky turned pink and orange, and Sophie said it looked like one of those paintings that's too pretty to be real. Her eyes looked different in that light. Lighter, more green than brown. I didn't want the day to end, but eventually the coffee shop started closing up, and we had to leave. We walked back to the parking lot, and I was trying to figure out how to ask if I could see her again without sounding desperate when she just said it first. "Same time next Saturday?" she asked. "Unless that's too soon. I don't really know the rules for this stuff." "There's no rules," I said, probably too fast. "Next Saturday's perfect." She smiled and then did something I wasn't expecting at all. She stepped closer and kissed me on the cheek, real quick, and then walked to her car before I could even react. I just stood there like an idiot watching her drive away. Jake called me approximately 30 seconds later because apparently he'd been tracking my location like a psycho. I told him everything, and he was so excited, you would have thought he was the one who just went on the date. He kept saying I owed him for the bet, pushing me to do it, and I kept reminding him that technically I won the bet, so he owed me an ACL ticket. We went to ACL together 4 weeks later, all 3 of us actually, me and Jake and Sophie. She knew like every band playing, and she sang along to everything, even when she didn't quite know all the words and didn't care who heard her. At one point during this sunset set, she grabbed my hand and pulled me closer to the stage, and I realized this was actually happening. This whole thing was real. That was 6 months ago now. Sophie's stuff is slowly taking over my apartment. Paintbrushes in the bathroom and books stacked on every surface, and her horrible collection of vintage mugs that don't match anything. She still goes out on her balcony to read sometimes, but now I go with her. We pushed our lawn chairs together so they're basically 1 chair. And we sit out there in the evenings when it's not too hot, and sometimes we read, and sometimes we just talk, and sometimes we don't do anything at all. Jake takes full credit for everything, obviously. He tells the story at parties like he's some kind of matchmaker genius. And honestly, I let him have it, because he's not completely wrong. I never would have knocked on her door if he hadn't pushed me. But Sophie always corrects him on one detail. She says I would have figured it out eventually, that she'd been noticing me too from her balcony and was just waiting for me to make a move. She says she had it all planned out, that if I didn't ask her out soon, she was going to do it herself. I don't know if that's true or if she just says it to make me feel better. But either way, I'm glad Jake made that stupid bet. Best $400 I never had to spend.